It sounds like you've had a tumultuous relationship with your husband's family, especially with your mother-in-law, Evelyn. From the beginning, things were rocky. Evelyn is a classic clinical narcissist, always making everything about herself, even demanding gifts on her children's birthdays because, according to her, they wouldn't exist without her. Your husband, Brandon, has always been the golden boy in her eyes, and she often overshadowed his accomplishments by turning the spotlight on herself. When you first started dating Brandon, Evelyn was sweet and welcoming, but as your relationship grew serious, her behavior changed for the worse. Things really hit a boiling point when you and Brandon got married 3 years ago. Evelyn made wedding planning a nightmare, trying to impose her ideas and control every detail. Thankfully, you and Brandon had decided to pay for the wedding yourselves to avoid her interference, but it didn't stop her from trying to change your venue and layout, which you firmly declined. She complained to Brandon, who tried to persuade you to compromise, but you stood your ground. You always envisioned a casual, fun, non-religious wedding, and the only request you had for Evelyn and your bridesmaids was to choose a dress within your color palette and run it by you before purchasing. While your mother and bridesmaids were cooperative, Evelyn never showed you any options. She always had an excuse. On your wedding day, she shocked everyone by showing up in an off-white dress, a blatant attempt to steal the spotlight. It was a medium-length dress with a transparent chiffon layer and a bolero. Her smug smile made it clear she intended to be a thorn in your side forever. You burst into tears, and Brandon immediately confronted her, asking her to either change or leave. Your father-in-law refused to take her home, leading to an argument. To keep the peace, you let her stay, but it was embarrassing as guests noticed her inappropriate attire. Brandon downplayed the incident, telling you to let it go because, after all, you were the bride. His lack of understanding left you hurt, but you decided to forgive Evelyn, even though she never apologized. Her narcissistic behavior didn't end there. When you were trying to get pregnant, you experienced a miscarriage, which made you understandably anxious. When you became pregnant again, you and Brandon decided to wait until you were past the first trimester to share the news. Brandon was supportive, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books with you, and setting up a nursery. After reaching the crucial first trimester milestone, you planned a lunch to announce the news to your family and friends. While most of your family was overjoyed, Evelyn's reaction was the opposite. She was furious that you had kept the pregnancy a secret and accused you of intentionally excluding her. Despite your attempts to explain, she remained cold and distant throughout the lunch, not addressing you at all and even being disrespectful to your mother. Her bitterness cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful occasion. As the night progressed, Evelyn vented her anger to Brandon, accusing you of controlling everything and not considering her as family. This led to a heated argument between Brandon and his mother, which you overheard. Her harsh words left you in tears, but your own mother advised you not to engage, knowing Evelyn was looking for a fight. Evelyn continued to blame you, saying you had the audacity to keep her grandchild a secret. After this incident, your relationship with Evelyn continued to deteriorate. She tried to teach your baby to call her ma instead of grandma, constantly begged to babysit, and then exaggerated how much you relied on her help. When you had health issues post-pregnancy, she told you to get over yourself and be a better mother. Despite all this, you tolerated her for Brandon's sake. Recently, your in-laws moved to a new place and invited you to visit. Brandon was busy, so he urged you to go alone with your daughter, Sophie, to keep his mother from calling him constantly. Reluctantly, you agreed. After dropping Sophie off at a friend's birthday party, you went to your in-laws' new home, which was a massive, beautifully decorated property. When you arrived, Evelyn seemed disappointed that Brandon and Sophie weren't with you. She started complaining about how selfish you all were for not making time for her. You tried to change the subject, and she invited you inside to see the new place. Inside, you were greeted by your sister-in-law, Rebecca, and her son, Logan. Rebecca, much like her mother, never seemed to like you, and barely engaged with you during the visit. Evelyn led you to her new walk-in closet and surprisingly asked for your opinion on her wardrobe. You were caught off guard but decided to see this as a chance to bond. As you were looking through the clothes, Logan suddenly pushed you into the closet and locked the door behind you, turning off the lights. You were trapped in darkness, feeling claustrophobic and panicked. You tried calling out for help, but Evelyn and Rebecca, who were supposedly in the backyard, didn't respond. You called Brandon for help, but he was dismissive, telling you to call someone else. Desperate, you called your father-in-law, who rushed home to unlock the closet. When you confronted Evelyn and Rebecca, they dismissed your account, claiming Logan would never do such a thing. This left you frustrated and disheartened, especially when Brandon later accused you of overreacting and dismissed your fears. The situation took a turn when you received a TikTok video from your cousin, showing that Logan had recorded the entire incident and posted it online. Furious, you demanded apologies and threatened legal action if the video wasn't taken down. Your mother-in-law and sister-in-law brushed it off as a harmless prank, but you took the matter to the police. This incident opened your eyes to the toxicity of your husband's family and the lack of support from Brandon. When your sister-in-law's husband, Chris, returned from a trip and found out what had happened, he made Logan apologize and insisted on taking down the video. Logan confessed that Evelyn had encouraged him to pull the prank on you. Shocked, you saved the conversation screenshots as evidence. Ultimately, you decided to move out and start divorce proceedings. You couldn't forgive the way Brandon and his family treated you, and you realized you needed to prioritize your own well-being. Although the decision was difficult, it was clear that staying in the marriage would only lead to more pain. The support from your family and friends helped you see the truth about the toxic environment you were in, and you chose to put yourself first, even if it meant leaving behind the life you had envisioned with Brandon. As you began to navigate the process of separating from Brandon, you found strength in the support of your own family. They reassured you that you deserved better, and you started to see a future without the constant turmoil and manipulation that had plagued your marriage. The decision to move out was both liberating and terrifying. You took Sophie and temporarily stayed with your parents while sorting out the logistics of the separation. Brandon's initial reaction was one of disbelief. He never thought you would actually leave. He tried to convince you to come back, downplaying the incident with Logan as just a childish prank and insisting that his mother had no ill intentions. But your resolve was firm. You knew this wasn't just about one incident, it was about years of being undermined, disrespected, and gaslighted. Evelyn, of course, was furious when she found out about the separation. She accused you of tearing the family apart and selfishly taking Sophie away from her. She tried to turn Brandon against you, blaming you for everything and painting herself as the victim. However, you had anticipated this and had already documented years of text messages, voicemails, and emails that showcased her manipulative behavior. You had also sought legal advice early on, knowing that you needed to protect yourself and Sophie. Your lawyer was confident that you had a strong case, especially given the evidence of Evelyn's toxic influence and Brandon's failure to support you. This gave you the courage to stand your ground and focus on building a better life for yourself and your daughter. As the weeks passed, Brandon's attempts to win you back became more desperate. He apologized profusely, promising to set boundaries with his mother and even suggesting counseling. But it felt like too little, too late. The trust had been broken too many times, and you couldn't shake the feeling that if you went back, things would eventually return to the way they were. In the meantime, you found solace in reconnecting with old friends and pursuing your own interests that had taken a back seat during your marriage. You started to rediscover who you were outside of the role of a wife and mother. Your work as a company president gave you a sense of purpose and stability, and you poured your energy into growing the business. One of the most empowering moments came when you realized you didn't need to explain or justify your decision to anyone. You had every right to leave a situation that was toxic and harmful. This newfound clarity helped you deal with the inevitable gossip and judgment from some members of Brandon's extended family and mutual friends who didn't fully understand the situation. As the separation process unfolded, you prepared yourself for the next steps. You and Brandon discussed co-parenting arrangements for Sophie, and while it was challenging to navigate, you remained focused on her well-being. You wanted her to have a healthy relationship with both parents, but you also knew you needed to protect her from the dysfunction that had poisoned your marriage. Evelyn's behavior grew more erratic as it became clear that you were serious about leaving. She made several dramatic attempts to involve herself in your separation, from trying to organize family interventions to spreading rumors about you. However, you remained steadfast, knowing that cutting ties with her toxicity was essential for your own peace of mind. In the end, your decision to leave Brandon wasn't just about escaping a bad situation, it was about reclaiming your own life. You realized that you had been sacrificing your happiness and well-being for far too long, and it was time to put yourself and Sophie first. The path ahead wasn't easy, but it was filled with possibilities that you hadn't allowed yourself to consider before. You knew that the road to healing would take time, but you also knew that you were finally free to live on your own terms, surrounded by the love and support of those who truly cared about you. As the dust began to settle after your separation from Brandon, you focused on building a new life for yourself and Sophie. You found a small but cozy apartment that was perfect for the two of you, close enough to your parents for support but far enough to give you space to establish your independence. The new environment felt like a fresh start, a place where you could create new memories and leave the past behind. Sophie, though young, adapted surprisingly well to the changes. She missed her father, but your unwavering love and reassurance helped her feel secure. You made it a point to establish routines that gave her stability: morning breakfasts together, bedtime stories, and weekend adventures. These moments became the cornerstone of your new life, reinforcing the bond between you and your daughter. Brandon's behavior during the separation was a mix of remorse and resistance. He struggled to accept that the marriage was over, alternating between pleading for reconciliation and expressing anger over your decision. You remained firm, though, understanding that his promises were likely born out of fear of change rather than a genuine commitment to making things right. Meanwhile, Evelyn's influence waned as you distanced yourself from her toxic presence. She continued her attempts to interfere, but with the support of your lawyer, you were able to set clear boundaries that kept her at arm's length. This allowed you to focus on your healing process without the constant stress of her manipulations. Your work as a company president became both a distraction and a source of empowerment. You channeled your energy into growing the business, finding satisfaction in each milestone achieved. Your team noticed the shift in your demeanor. There was a new confidence in your leadership, a clarity of vision that came from knowing you were taking control of your life. The success of the company also provided financial stability, which gave you the freedom to make decisions that were best for you and Sophie without feeling dependent on anyone else. As months turned into a year, you began to see the fruits of your hard work. Your business flourished, and you gained a reputation as a strong and capable leader in your industry. More importantly, you found peace and contentment in your personal life. The wounds from your marriage slowly healed, and you started to feel whole again. You also began to think about the future in ways you hadn't before. For the first time in a long while, you allowed yourself to dream about what you wanted out of life, not just for Sophie, but for yourself. You explored new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and even considered dating again, though you were in no rush. The idea of finding someone who appreciated and respected you for who you were was appealing, but you knew you needed time to fully heal before jumping into another relationship. Your relationship with Brandon evolved as well. Over time, the anger and resentment began to fade, replaced by a mutual understanding that while your marriage had ended, you both had a responsibility to parent Sophie in the best way possible. You worked out a custody arrangement that allowed Sophie to spend time with both of you, and you made it a priority to communicate clearly and respectfully for her sake. Evelyn, who had initially been a major source of tension, gradually lost her influence. Without you to target, she turned her attention elsewhere, and you found that your interactions with her became few and far between. The relief of not having to deal with her constant interference was one of the greatest gifts of your separation. As you moved forward, you felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey you had been through. It had been painful, and there were days when you questioned whether you had made the right decision, but ultimately, you knew you had. You had reclaimed your life, and in doing so, you had set an example for Sophie about the importance of self-respect and standing up for what you believe in. Your story became one of resilience and transformation, a testament to the strength it takes to leave a situation that no longer serves you and the courage to build a new life on your own terms. And while the road had been challenging, it led you to a place of peace, where you and Sophie could thrive and grow together.